With 32 NFL teams and one champion per season, there are bound to be teams and players disappointed at season's end. Expectations are a huge part of the NFL, and some teams have lived up to them, while others have exceeded, or in the case of today's video, failed to live up to expectations. Not every team or player that has a bad season is as simple as they just flat out played bad, and sure, that can be the case, but it's not always the case. Exiting the NFL draft and free agency, you always hear about winners and losers, and in today's video, we are going to discuss 4 of the biggest losers from the 2022 NFL season. There are going to be examples of both players and teams in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And the first player we are going to discuss in today's video is Justin Fields. This may be a surprising one because of how Justin has played down the stretch, and to be clear, this is not because of Justin's performance. He is an electric player with the ball in his hands, and a player a lot of teams wish they could have. The reason Justin is one of the biggest losers of the entire 2022 NFL season is because of the help he has around him, or the lack of. Bears general manager Ryan Poles inherited a mess that former GM Ryan Pace left behind, as when Justin was drafted back in 2021, the Bears gave up their 2022 first-round pick to acquire Fields. So Poles' first draft was already going to be a tough one for a process that is hard to hit to begin with, but they didn't help Justin out as much as they should have, and it shows week in and week out. The biggest bone I had to pick with the Bears' 2022 draft was entering the year, a lot of people thought they were going to be a bad team, and the results, well, they've spoken for themselves in 2022. But Chicago had not one, but 2 top 50 draft picks because they traded former Bear Khalil Mack this past offseason to the Chargers. I like Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker as prospects and as young players, but I did not like the Bears, knowing the situation they were in with Fields, choosing them over players like George Pickens, Sky Moore, and Alec Pierce, and especially George Pickens. I really thought they hung Justin out to dry entering the 2022 season and were pretty much like, well, you weren't our quarterback, so if this doesn't work out, we can always take a quarterback next year and be okay. And Justin has been one of the very, very few bright spots on this team in what will be viewed as a very forgettable year. And the Bears have done very little to help him. Instead of George Pickens, they drafted a 25-year-old rookie receiver in Velus Jones Jr., who Bears fans do not like due in large part to having a case of the drops. And not only did they give Justin Velus Jones, they also traded a second-round pick for Chase Claypool in what I thought was a bit of not only an overpay, but just a very weird trade. Claypool will be a free agent at the end of the 2023 season if they do not extend him, and it's not like the Bears were a team that started out 6-0 or 6-1 and collapsed. They were 3-5 with wins over the 49ers in a monsoon, a win over the Texans, who are more than likely going to have the number 1 draft pick, and a win over the Patriots on Monday night. At this point, they had also traded away Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. So I honestly thought these were kind of half-assed attempts to bring Justin some legitimate weapons, and there's a reason they are going to be picking in the top 5. And since Chase Claypool became a member of the Bears, he has yet to win a game. And how all of this comes full circle and why Justin Fields is one of the biggest losers of the season, all you have to do is take a look at Jacksonville as an example of what good coaching and improvements over the course of a single offseason can do when you believe in your quarterback. And when you compare each franchise and what they've done for their quarterback, it's not close. From Illinois to Indiana we go to discuss the Indianapolis Colts 2022 season, and there is a lot to dive into and unpack with this one. They traded for veteran quarterback Matt Ryan this offseason, and the thought process was Matt may have something left in the tank if he is around good weapons like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, for example, and that they could win the AFC South and potentially win a playoff game. With a singular game left, they are 4-11-1 and have had pretty much anything that could have went wrong for them go wrong for them. This has been a woeful year. They fired former head coach Frank Reich for starters, and why the Colts are one of the biggest losers of the 2022 NFL season is not for firing Frank, as I was all for that during the weekly recaps, but instead of hiring an offensive line coach or a special teams coordinator like you often see teams do for their interim head coach, they hired Jeff Saturday to be the interim, which made zero sense. They were understandably mocked all over social media, and after winning their first game with Jeff Saturday as their head coach, they have lost 6 in a row, including, but not limited to, giving up the largest comeback in NFL history to the Minnesota Vikings. There were also some unfortunate things that didn't go their way, like Jonathan Taylor getting hurt, for example, but this has been a train wreck from the start. They tied the Houston Texans in Week 1 in a game I thought they would have won by at least a touchdown, and then got shut out in Jacksonville in Week 2. And people may look back and think it was an awful Colts season, and how could they possibly get shut out against the Jags of all teams, but to at least acknowledge a reason why their offense was so bad that day. Their top 2 receivers were out, and Matt Ryan, with virtually no offensive line, was throwing to Ashton Doolin and Desmond Patton as his top 2 guys. It also doesn't help Shaquille Leonard only played in 3 games due to a back injury, and Quentin Nelson, the once feared offensive lineman, has given up 5 sacks in 2022 alone, which is far and away the most of his career. His previous high was 2 in a season, which was back in 2018. And Colts fans have expressed their frustration with Big Q as they feel he got paid and immediately stopped caring. He has also allowed 30 pressures this year, which is also the most in his career. The Colts 2022 season has been an absolute disaster, and like we said, pretty much anything that could have went wrong has. And they are going to be drafting very high and will more than likely have a new GM at season's end as well. It's one thing for a franchise to have a bad year and to fail expectations. We get it, those things happen with 32 NFL franchises, as not everything is always going to go according to plan. But it's another to have self-inflicted wounds, like hiring Jeff Saturday for absolutely zero reason, and to pretty much say to the current coaching staff, well, I just liked him more than you guys. It's been a very demoralizing year for the Indianapolis Colts, and they are absolutely one of the biggest losers of the 2022 NFL season. Next up is the Washington Commanders, and this is for a couple of reasons. They are 7-8-1 and are eliminated from the playoffs, and I think the loss to the Cleveland Browns in Week 17, in a lot of ways, summarizes not just their season, but in a lot of ways, I think it summarizes the Dan Snyder era of ownership. During this game, the Commanders had several chances to win, and they opted to start quarterback Carson Wentz. I am admittedly not the biggest fan of Carson, and I thought this was a mistake, as simply put, I don't think Carson gave them the best chance to win. I think it's pretty evident how the team rallies around Taylor Heinicke, and sure, Taylor may not be the best statistical quarterback, and he's not, but as cliche as this sounds, you can see an energy difference when Carson Wentz is out there versus Taylor Heinicke. And in this game, Carson threw not 1, not 2, but 3 interceptions, and 2 were in double coverage, both to Browns safety Grant Delpit. Denzel Ward had the other interception. These weren't interceptions where Delpit made an insane play where he went off of his assignment to make a play only 2 or 3 players in the entire NFL can make. They were ducks, and Carson has been very underwhelming as a member of both the Colts and Commanders. Not only was this an awful decision to start him against Cleveland, but it came out after the game that head coach Ron Rivera did not know it was a must-win game for his team. And I like Ron as a person, and I'm sure most of us do, but this is inexcusable. Within the 2022 season for the Commanders, there's been a hell of a lot of drama with the Dan Snyder situation, and that's an understatement. This team has a lot of talented players, and you can't help but feel for a guy like Terry McLaurin or Jonathan Allen, who are, in some ways, having their careers wasted because of, for the lack of better wording, bullshit that routinely happens with the Commanders. We always hear about franchises being stuck in mediocrity, and the Commanders certainly are, but they're almost stuck in this area that's even worse. They're stuck in an area that's slightly below average, but will beat teams like the Bears and like the Texans, and stumble into 6 or 7 wins every year, while not being in the bottom 5 bad, and certainly not good enough to win one, let alone multiple playoff games. The Washington Commanders are going to spend the playoffs at home, and hopefully for the players' sake, Dan sells the team and Carson Wentz is not the quarterback in 2023, because this is a disaster. Next up is Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals, and hear me out when I say this because it has nothing to do with Kyler getting injured. The Arizona Cardinals were 4-8 entering the Patriots game, and this has been a bad year for them. They made the playoffs for the first time in the Kyler and Cliff era in 2021, and what I think will also be the final time they make the playoffs in the Kyler and Cliff era. The Cardinals roster is not good, and when you factor in they are in a division with the Rams, who very much expect to be back next year, the Seahawks, who had a good year this year when you factor in what the expectations were, and the 49ers, who are one of the best teams in football, I simply ask, what is the Arizona Cardinals' game plan each and every offseason? In 10 games this year, Kyler had just 14 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions, and the team was 3-7 in games he played. Technically, they were 3-8 because he started the Patriots game, and in theory, that would go down as a loss for Kyler, but we are not including that in this scenario. Their wins when Kyler played were over the Raiders, a team who is not good and benched quarterback Derek Carr, the then Matt Rule-led Panthers, and the Saints on a Thursday night game in October. And within the season for the Cardinals and Kyler Murray, it wasn't just, oh well, shucks, we lost another game. No. People were attacking the Cardinals this year on social media in ways they usually never do, and people were asking about Kyler and the Call of Duty release dates, and him with the playbook and how he needed to have a study time and the whole nine. This was in a lot of ways a very bad year for the Cardinals for several reasons, and who knows what they are going to do moving forward because this is a very sticky situation. Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders, Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, and Zach Wilson and the New York Jets are all certainly applicable for today's video, and certainly could have been in today's video, but I thought they were too obvious of a selection, and wanted to branch out more than just those few quarterbacks and teams. And guys, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel as it would mean the world, and until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.